We're more than just gis. Check out our inventory at dojooutfitters.com. Thanks for watching and enjoy the show.
Only 25% of the viewers are subscribed. Hit that button to support the channel. Mahalos.
Dojo Outfitter family, what's going on? Welcome back to the show. Today we got Jason Kundell. What's up, Jason?
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Yo, man, I'm doing great.
Yeah?
This is awesome.
I agree.
Getting to talk to you without hurting me is amazing.
I don't know if it's as much fun for me, but I'm going to do my best.
It's way more fun for me.
I believe that.
I should have brought a shirt. I'm probably in the top 5 of worst people to get tattooed you've ever had. Maybe not, I don't know. But I would bring a shirt with me so I could hide my face when I was getting tattooed so people couldn't look over and be like, what is wrong with that guy?
It's true. It's not good for the rest of the customers to see someone in such agonizing pain. I appreciate you being thoughtful.
I made it.
You made it. You made it through the other side.
Dude, I made it through. I couldn't believe it.
I don't know if I could believe it either. I've not seen it.
I celebrated.
Yeah, I did too when you were done.
It's so true. Yo, for those who don't know, Jason is the owner of Artwork Rebel Tattoo Shop. Very famous street artist. Father, friend of the shop. And overall, a really cool dude. So I just want to say thank you again for coming on.
My pleasure.
You're honestly a legend.
How's that?
In the tattoo world, in the graffiti world. Andy actually told me a story where he either posted the graffiti that you did at Portland Judo or the graffiti that you did at Professor Shane's house. And he said that he got a random message from a guy in California that referred to you by your graffiti street name, which I forgot, and was like, is this so-and-so? And this guy knew it was your graffiti just by seeing it.
Yeah, I actually started doing graffiti even long before I started doing judo, Jiu Jitsu, tattooing, all of that. Like, I got into graffiti real young. And I think it's like most things in my life. It's just like a matter of doing it for so long and persevering that, yeah, I've done all right in the graffiti world.
How long does it take you to do a piece like you did at Portland Judo? Hope J-May will flash up the picture right now.
The big one?
Yeah.
The big one was, and a friend helped me. A guy who was working for me helped me. And so that one was like 2 days. That was a little bigger than I usually do. But typically like a day is like what it takes. Like kind of a full day these days. Like I don't do it enough that I'm so fast anymore at it. I'm efficient and proficient enough, obviously, after all these years, but I'm not like fast how I probably was in my heyday of painting, you know. Like my heyday, no one can tell under this mask how old I am, but my heyday was like 1991 to 1997. So that's a long time ago for most people.
Yeah.
I mean, I've continued to paint through the years, and I still do, you know. But it's been a long time since I've painted that prolifically.
So were you interested in art right away as a kid?
Yeah, I kind of, these days, it's funny, I look back and see like sort of my growing up, and I was very much sort of unintentionally pushed to do art. It was always around the house. There was always a lot of like music, arts. My mom made children's clothing growing up originally, and my dad always did photography, and my grandpa was a violinist, a professional violinist his whole life. My sister was an art major and teaches and makes art. So yeah, it's just like, it's been around. And, you know, like my parents were really always pretty supportive and wanted to see me doing art. Not so much graffiti. They weren't so supportive of that, especially getting arrested and things like that. And in the beginning, not even so much tattooing, but after like a couple of years, they really saw like what I was doing and were into it. So yeah, I was kind of always around art and always sort of grew up in this family where I could like be artistic.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me about getting started in tattooing then, because you kind of have it's kind of a funny story how it all got started.
Well, the long of the short is, so I got started tattooing when I was living in San Diego from 95 to early 97, which is where I started doing judo too. And I had a friend in my graffiti crew who had kind of just started tattooing, and he was, I was a little bit, what you would say, more of the hierarchy as far as graffiti goes. Like I had been doing it longer, and I was, real prolific at the time and stuff like that. And I was really interested in tattooing, and he had started tattooing, and I asked him to teach me. And he'll tell people like that he saw that I had a lot of talent, but I think there was probably a little bit of like feeling like he had to do it because of my position in the graffiti world, But regardless, he did it. And at first I was just tattooing out of my house in San Diego. He helped me get some equipment. His name is Paco, and his partner Adrian were the first people to teach me. But I just started tattooing in my apartment in San Diego and fucking up my friends, which is...
I mean, it's
how
hard.
Most of us do it.
I know, but it's so hard for me to imagine. I see your work now, and I guess it's just hard for me to imagine something horrible. Like how?
Oh, it's horrible.
I mean, how bad? I feel like you're just being critical. I bet they were still stoked when they got it.
They were. The only reason they were stoked is because they were getting free tattoos, which is kind of how it works, also. But it's like anything. You just like it don't matter how good you are. You always start at the bottom, And it's like when you go to Judo or Jiu Jitsu, and you know it now from like working out with white belts on your first day, and you get fucking kicked in the face and kneed in the nuts and whatever, scratched in the eyeballs and stuff like that. And it's like no matter how much they even know like that this is part of the process and they don't mean it, and they don't mean it, it just happens. You just suck. You suck at everything in the beginning. It's the way life works, Like I had an advantage with, I think, having a good eye for art, but aside from that, like that doesn't teach you anything about tattooing,
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the judo thing. How did you fall into that?
So when I moved to San Diego in '95, my girlfriend at the time was going to UC San Diego, and they had like an extracurricular class that was for anybody, and it was a judo class. And it turned out like the black belt who taught it, he was probably around my age now. The black belt who taught it also taught at this judo school called the San Diego Judo Institute, which was really pretty well known at the time. And that school ended up being literally like 45 feet from my house. So once I like kind of figured it out and did the class, and I was just hooked on it immediately,
How old are you at the time?
So I'd be like 20.
Oh, perfect.
Probably like 20, yeah. And yeah, especially it being so close, like I was just there all the time and like twice a day, and I really I enjoyed like the culture, and I enjoyed the people and stuff like that, and the community. It was a super interesting coach who, like, I don't know if people would know him these days, but the old sensei was this guy named Alt Holtman, who at the time was like an old crotchety curmudgeon. I mean, he got a lot of his training when he was in the Korean War, so that will sort of tell you his age. And he was just this old fucking curmudgeon and would love to like demonstrate stuff on you and just push it a little far, like show you an arm bar and you'd be tapping and he'd just like let it go a little bit longer. And yeah, it was just a funny old guy, and he would tell funny anecdotes about doing judo for like 60 or 70 years. So yeah, I got started doing judo there, and then in '97 I moved back to San Francisco, where I was living before that. And the older, better guys at the place were like, "Oh, you have to go to the San Francisco Judo Institute," which was also like a classic staple. And Sensei Kimura, who was the main sensei at that place, like when he passed away, he had been doing judo for over 7 decades. You know, he had his 9th dan. Like he competed in the worlds, I think in the 50s and stuff like that. Like he was amazing. And a lot of people subsequently like went from that school to either like San Jose State, Olympic Training Center, some Olympians, you know, stuff like that. There was it was like a really high quality, it was a lot of high quality training.
So when did you get your judo black belt then?
Well, I didn't get my judo black belt till I came up here. Once my old sensei passed away, there was all sorts of like political sort of like upheaval and unrest at my old school. So I had been a brown belt I originally got my Sankyu in 1997.
Jeez.
And then I think I was competing a lot back then, and I got my EQ in like 2002. And then Sensei passed away, and I was just stuck at a brown belt. And I used to go work and train in Japan a lot. And even at they wouldn't let me train at the Kodokan in Tokyo because of all my tattoos. But the Kodokan in Osaka, they were really cool to me, and they'd let me train there. And they wanted to give me my black belt, but it kind of didn't feel right. Being that like wasn't like my home school, you know, and stuff like that. And so I came back, and then I ended up moving to Spain in 2004, and I found a place to train out there, and they wanted to give me my black belt, but it also just didn't really feel right. You know, the black belt sort of wasn't that important. It was like the journey, you know, and I felt like I was, especially back then, I felt like I was good especially for who I was or where I was belt-wise, you know, like I was only working out with like 1st and 2nd and 3rd dans in Japan, and I felt like I did fine with them, you know.
Man,
and then I finally came to Portland Judo when they opened up, and I don't know if it was Sensei Andy who was like, "Why don't you get your black belt?" And I was like, "God, I don't know. Why don't I get my black belt, I guess."
And it felt right coming from Andy Sensei and Roy Sensei.
I think it felt right that I felt like a community again, like I used to have back before my old Sensei Kimura died. I felt like I had that community, and that I felt proud to like get it from Sensei Roy and Sensei Andy and Sensei Louie, you know.
Definitely.
So,
I've gotten a couple belts from those guys. Feels great.
Yeah. So it did feel great. It was a long time. I mean, like, it was they say it's the journey, not the destination, and it was a long fucking journey.
Yeah.
But it did feel really good when I finally got it, you know.
Gosh, because you're over 10 years at the brown belt? Is that what I'm doing the math?
Oh yeah.
More than that? 15 years?
Yeah, 15, 16 years. I like to tell people I'm a slow learner.
So when did you start your jiu-jitsu journey then?
So jiu-jitsu I started back in the Bay Area. One of my best friends, who was later my partner at my second tattoo shop, Luke Stewart, he was like the jiu-jitsu prodigy at Half Gracie's, which is where I started. And then first, me and him just started. We became friends through just being friends and tattooing. And he was already killing it. Like, I think when we first started cross training, he was a blue belt, but especially back then with Half, like he probably could have been a purple or brown belt anywhere. Like he was winning the Pan Ams as a blue back in the day when that was like 6 fights, you know, with like huge brackets. So originally we just started cross training because I wanted to have better jiu-jitsu when I was competing more, you know, like, I mean, like, you know, the people who do the best in judo these days, like, have really exceptional, like, ground games, you know. So me and him started cross training, and then eventually, especially when a lot of the political stuff was happening after my sensei died, I was always doing a little jujitsu, but I kind of started tipping the scales more, where I was like doing about the same amount of jujitsu as judo, and then a little bit more jujitsu than judo, which is more how it's been probably the last decade. It's been a little more jujitsu than judo. So anyway, that's how I got started. So I started training at Half's with Luke and some of those guys, and Kurt was, one of the main teachers, Kurt Osiander.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Kurt, because that was definitely one of my questions. What was it like? Because you were learning from him way before he was super famous.
Yeah, I mean, he was just the, him and Half were the main instructors there, and Half had a couple schools, so Kurt was there every day, teaching class 4 times a day, doing privates. Like, he lived at the gym. He just, he was an encyclopedia of, I mean, he's got this incredible repertoire of technique, and he's so amazing that, like, he can teach it really well. He can, like, slow it down for beginners, and then he can also, like, show you exactly how it's done step by step, both left side and right side. I mean, he's amazing, and he's a fun dude. So my first Artwork Rebels tattoo shop that me and my partner had was just like a block from the old Half Gracie's. And then eventually, years later, when me and Luke and another partner opened up our next shop, Seventh Son, Half Gracie's ended up moving a block from there. So we've kind of always been neighbors.
Yeah.
And Half's always been really cool to me. And Kurt's, Kurt is a friend, and he came up during after the explosion and did a seminar and donated all that money. Like,
can I tell you something really quick?
You can tell me.
So me and J-May were both at the seminar, and listen, I've been doing judo, jiu-jitsu for 7 years now. This is one of my favorite moments of all time.
Yeah.
So we end up... No, don't hide your face. Don't hide your face. So Kurt shows a move and asks if anybody has a question. And and I know. That means don't ask a question. Especially if you're a white belt. Like, don't say anything.
Yeah.
And this guy raises his hand as high as possible and proceeds to ask one of the dumbest questions of all time. I don't remember the question, but it was dumb. And Kurt roasted him so bad, then proceeded to ask who brought him, and all of us were like this. Not us. But it's just so funny. Like, he roasted him so bad, and it's one of my favorite jiu-jitsu stories.
Kurt's good at roasting people, for sure.
Did you ever get roasted by Kurt?
I'm sure I did along the way, but different. Like, we were friends, Kurt used to love to call me Super Mustache. So I had this big mustache, which the mustache is probably the same, but I have a beard now, which keeps pulling my mask down. But yeah, Kurt was always really cool to me. He was great. It's just great.
So how did you find Nemesis then?
So that's an interesting story. So I had a friend from back in San Francisco named Josh who did, he did a little bit more boxing, but he did some MMA. So he did some jiu-jitsu and a little bit of wrestling and stuff like that. So he was a friend from San Francisco, and he was also really into the tattoo scene as well. And when I moved up here, he worked for a friend's shop called Atlas Tattoo here in town. He was the manager there. And so when I came up here, I was like, hey, where should I train? And just because we were friends, he was like, oh, you would really get along good with Eric Hemphill. And at that time, Eric was just opening Nemesis. So, like, Nemesis, I think, opened like a month after I opened the Artwork Rebels up here in Portland, Oregon. So the timing worked out great. So it was sort of like Eric was building it, and Josh was he was certain we would be friends. And I had been out. I was building the Artwork Rebel shop, so I had been out of judo and jiu-jitsu for probably like, I don't know, 4 months or something like that. Like just doing construction and eating pizza, basically. And anyway, Eric finally opened, and I went in there, and I was so out of shape, but like we instantly clicked and became good friends. And he was like really some of like the first friends I made. And he would, in addition to like training, which was super fun, like we hung out outside of training all the time. And then I started tattooing him, and he would take me and at that time just my one daughter, and we would go on little river trips and stuff like that. So yeah, we just like clicked instantly. And
he's a cool dude.
He's the greatest, and he's one of my best friends, and he just also happens to be a fucking wizard at jiu-jitsu, you know.
All right, let me call him out then real quick.
Yeah.
I'm calling him out.
Your funeral, but go ahead.
Can we get you your black belt?
In what?
In jiu-jitsu.
Oh no,
No.
I'm same thing as judo. I'm a slow learner.
Learner.
I got a long ways to go.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
I think we'll listen. I think we'll put in. I'm like, dude.
I haven't even trained since the pandemic. Well, not really.
Me neither.
Yeah.
I definitely have not trained at all.
Yeah. No. I've had one friend who we've done the solo mat thing, but even that hasn't been very regular.
Don't check my Instagram. I have not been training.
Yeah. Good to know.
Dude, let me go back to tattooing a little bit, because I know that you had a few shops before Artwork Rebels, but I'm most interested in learning about Artwork Rebel and how the shop kind of came to fruition, and also kind of why you decided to move up to Oregon as well from California.
Yeah. So me and my first partner opened the first Artwork Rebels in San Francisco. It was just a small private place. It was, probably about the size of here, Dojo Outfitters here. And originally it was just the two of us, and no signage on the door. And it was great for a while, and then we eventually, kind of like an old mentor of both of us, especially him, named Marcus Pacheco. My first partner's name is Brett Gremmelbean, goes by Grimy, and he's a fantastic tattooer. And Marcus Pacheco started working with us, which was kind of like a dream come true too. And then I just felt like I needed to go travel. Like I was traveling a bit for work, but then I decided like I wanted to like really go live somewhere else. So I moved to Spain, and my partner just kind of took care of the shop, and I'd come back like every 3 months, and I'd work for a little bit. And I did that for about a year, just traveled around Europe and tattooed Italy and UK and Spain and Germany. And then I decided, me and my girlfriend at the time decided to come back. And Artwork Rebels, the old Artwork Rebels the lease was about to finish. Grimy was buying his own like little unit to start his own shop in. And so I decided to open up a shop different than Artwork Rebels, because it wasn't me and him anymore, because he was in the graffiti crew also. But I opened it with Luke Stewart and a guy named Eric Reith, and that was Seventh Son, which now just Luke Stewart owns Seventh Son. So we opened that in about, I think, 2006. And I was working like crazy, and I just felt like in the Bay Area, especially at that time, like I could not get ahead. I was working as much as I possibly could, and I had my daughter, and I felt like I was working 70 hours a week, and there was never enough time for anything, and I just needed to sort of like slow life down a little bit. We didn't want to really raise her in the Bay Area, we didn't live in the most fantastic neighborhood in Oakland, and just got tired of it. It just wears you down, like every day, like waking up, like syringes on the streets. If I came home past like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, which I usually would from work, I'd take a taxi from the BART station because it was too dangerous to basically walk 5 blocks home, at night. And that shit just wears you down. And then my old shop in San Francisco was at 6th and Howard, so people who know that area know that it also is just sort of like ground zero for like just urban decay in its worst forms. And I was just getting worn down by life out there. And me and my girlfriend, Shelly at the time, we had our daughter, and we came up here because her mom was living about an hour north of here in Washington. So we came up to Portland, and like, I didn't know where we were, but came up to the Northwest and like had like 3 perfect days in May in the Northwest neighborhood here, and we were just like, fuck it, let's move to Portland.
This place is awesome.
This place is great. And this place is great. I fucking love it. You know, it's been about 11 years now, and I love it. So, you know, as soon as I came up here, I had been already thinking about how me and my partner Brett ran the first Artwork Rebels, and that was cool, and I learned from it. And then me and Luke and Eric had the seventh son, and that was a little too much drama, just the 3 of us. And I knew I wanted the next shop to be just me, and I had been thinking about how I wanted it. And the old Artwork Rebels here in Portland was really a dream I spent a long time on. I kind of wanted to make this idea of like what a natural history museum would be for a tattooer.
Yeah.
And that's how it was from every part. It was, you know, it had like...
And the location was incredible.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Because you got in, where was it? 18th? 19th?
No, it was at 23rd and Gleason.
23rd and Gleason, that's right. And from what I read, you were in there before it was cool down there.
Yeah, well, I purposely came up right at the heart of the recession in 2009 to try and find like a good lease, and I did, and I got really grandfathered into this great location and good lease, and I had to do a lot of work on the building, like retile it.
It was such a cool spot.
But it was a really cool spot.
Yeah.
It was a really cool spot. It was beautiful old Victorian, you know?
Yeah, I actually only, I think I went in twice.
Yeah.
I think I went in twice. I did both of my consoles right before the craziness of 2000. I think it was 2016, correct?
Yeah, 2016.
And man, I hate to put you on the spot and bring you back, but kind of talk to me about the gas explosion and
yeah, that's okay. That's what sells. Yeah. So there's an interesting series of events, to say the least. So basically, what happened was it was Wednesday, October 19th. 2016, which happens to be Eric Hemphill's birthday. Crappy birthday for him.
Happy birthday, Profess.
Yeah, crappier birthday for me. But what happened was my daughter and my stepdaughter were going to school at Chapman, right down the street. And one Wednesday out of the month is a late school day. So school doesn't start at 8:30 or whatever. It starts at 10:30, whatever it was. And it happened to be that day. So otherwise, I would have probably been at the shop a little earlier. But as it was, we were kind of walking out the door to drop them off at school. And I get a call basically from... Well, I first got a text from my old manager, Jen, saying, like, the gas smells really heavy in here. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to go get some coffee. Like, there's... like people working, they were doing construction across the street, and there's people working and the manholes like shaking and stuff. Like, I'm gonna get out of here. And so I got that text, and I was kind of hurrying the kids, I think, out the door, and we're going out the door, and I get a call from my best friend, and he's on speakerphone in the car, and he lives a block and a half from the old shop. So my buddy Gary is like freaking the fuck out. And he's sort of saying, like, I don't know what to say. I don't even know what you're telling them. There's smoke everywhere. Like, the shop is exploded. It's on fire. And, like, it's sort of like, I couldn't even believe what he was saying to me, you know? And my heart was kind of beating in my chest, thinking, like, even if this is a fraction right, this sounds terrible. So, drop the kids off at school, kind of, like, get them to hurry up. Turned out they were really scared because they thought we were, like, you know, I had animals at the old shop. I got snakes and frogs and a lizard and stuff, and so they thought we were going to go in there to save them. We were going to get blown up or whatever too. And basically, like, I came around the backside of the shop on 24th and Flanders, and I just watched the whole fucking thing was on fire, you know, like literally the entire building was on fire, like everything, like, I mean, that was 20 years of my life's work, and I mean, like, every fucking drawing, every illustration, every painting I bought or collected or traded with other tattooers, like, I mean, that shop was, I mean, there wasn't a drop of room with how much artwork there was in that place, and statues and collectibles and bric-a-brac down some, you know, masks that I got down some small dirt road in Kyoto and stuff like that, or trinkets that I got in Europe or fucking Central America or wherever I've been. Like, I always collected artwork, you know, and it was just all up in flames. And yeah, I mean, like, it's fucking wild, you know. It's been over 4 years now and still nothing has happened, you know. People think that when shit like that happens, especially something so documented, that, like, you know, the company responsible will just come out and be like, oh, here, we're really sorry for what we did, here's a check to hopefully get you back on your feet. And that shit doesn't happen in the real world. And it's been an interesting experience. Like, this has taught me so much, in good and bad. And, you know, like, ultimately, like, I feel like I'm a person who will persevere, and I have been, but I have had a fucking rough road the last 4 years, and that's been its own lesson as well, you know, like, knowing that, like, I can get through really hard times, but you know, life has crumbled in a lot of ways since then, and, like, I'm picking up the pieces still and doing what I can.
Man, I mean, and the hard part is there's nothing anybody can say. There's, you know, nothing that, it's so sad. So much, all that, to me, it was the artwork and the amount of time that went into all that stuff. If you accumulated all the time that went into all that stuff, is just...
Yeah, it is that is the saddest part. Like, it is pieces of my life that I will never get back, along with, yeah, I mean, you know, I had photographs that, this is obviously pre-digital, this dates back to a lot of stuff. So, like, I had photos, you know, I had photos of my daughter that I'll never get back. I had photos of, like, the first time I went to Japan and I got my head tattooed by Horiyoshi 3, you know, like, live photos that I will never get back. I had my goddamn fucking membership card to Upland Pipeline, this, like, famous skate park from the 70s and 80s in Upland, California, you know? Like, I just, in addition to, like, the art that I created, you know? Like, I created so much fucking art that I will never get back. Never get back, you know? Yeah, it is heartbreaking, you know? It's like, I think most people, like, you know, if I lost the computer, like, that's not a big deal. If I lost the desks, those things aren't a big deal. Those are inconsequential. But the amount of art that I lost, that I will never be able to get back, is, yeah, it's fucking heartbreaking.
Talk to me, though, about the response. Someone created a GoFundMe account, and it got an unreal amount of donations and generosity. I think it was over 350 people donated in less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
I know, I know that's not going to make everything better, but I'm sure that had to feel nice to know so many people support you.
Yeah, there was a great outpouring of support. One of my best friends, Jeff Croce, who also worked at Seventh Son with me, he immediately started the GoFundMe and really got it out. Like, these are people who are much more prolific on social media, thank goodness. And it also just so happened, it coincided with this, one of the best tattoo conventions in America, this one called the San Francisco Tattoo Convention, the Bay Area Tattoo Convention that my friend Taki puts on. And it was literally that weekend. So like the shop, I think, blew up. It was a Wednesday, and I think most of us were going to fly out that Thursday. And it's an international show, so people are out there from everywhere. And so it really kind of worked out to be good timing because, like, I mean, it was so catastrophic what happened, but there was such an outpouring, and there were so many people in one area at one time to really like hear what was going on and stuff. And yeah, I was really floored with like the tattoo community in general. Like I felt like they really got behind me, and that was definitely like a silver lining throughout this. Like I feel like I've always been, as far as sort of like karma goes in general, like I feel like I've always put a lot into tattooing. Like it's more than a job for me. It is a job, but it's also my passion. And I've always tried to go about all of it the right way, in a way that like is only going to benefit like the people who really truly care about tattooing. And I felt like those people really came back and were really gracious with me, and I'm really grateful for, like the Judo, the Jiu Jitsu community, like they made it possible for me to open a new shop. I mean, like, it was, I had over $200,000, maybe $250,000 worth of like equipment, art, everything in that old shop, that just vaporized. And so starting all over again, like it wouldn't have been able to be possible without the help of everyone who helped,
That is super cool. So tell me how you found the place on Washington then. How did you decide on
Third?
Third
Yeah,
in Washington?
Third. So really I was looking for something a little smaller, more in line of what I had on 23rd and Gleason. But the market in general, the economy was doing great when the shop exploded, 2016, and there just weren't places to be found. I was sort of looking for something around 1,000 square feet, and everyone wants something 1,000 square feet. It doesn't matter if you're a retailer or a chiropractor or whatever. It's just sort of like a nice average number that people want. And so I was finding things that were like 400 or 500 square feet, and I was finding things that were like 2,000 or 3,000 square feet. And at the time, I think I had 6 people working for me, and then my manager. And it just, it didn't feel right to leave anyone behind. There was like, immediately after, there was like, we were all... there was this great camaraderie that we all didn't die, basically, We're all happy that no one was in there, no one got killed. So it didn't feel right to leave anyone behind. The other thing was, when the economy is good, no one wants a fucking tattoo shop. So there were plenty of places I saw that would have worked, but the landlords were like, no thank you, we're trying to go a different direction, which basically means like, fuck you. We don't want your scumbag type here, and we don't want what you're going to bring to this neighborhood here, and that continues to happen. I just went through this again. But ultimately, I was looking downtown, and I was looking at a place near the place that I ended up opening it, but I just peeked my head in there with my broker, and that landlord, Mark Tobin, kind of reached back out to me, because I looked in it and it was about 2,000 square feet, and I just thought, like, this is way too much space. Like, there's no way I could afford this. And at the time, the landlord was like, hey, I know this is more space than you need, but let's just sit down and talk and see if we could maybe make the numbers work, So it was a lot more expensive than I originally had hoped, but for the size, it was really a good price. And then the other drawback was it needed a ton of work. It was sort of like, this is really low price, even though it's bigger than you need, but it's priced to sell. So I had to do a ton of the work, and me and my, my best friend Gary, like it was an insane amount of work at the worst possible time. And, it ultimately cost a lot, like not only financially, but it depleted my relationship with my ex now. It depleted my relationship with my best friend a bit. It just it was a lot to sacrifice looking back.
Yeah. I think I've been wanting to have you on the show for a while. But kind of after I read the post that you most recently put out, it just really, I just had to talk to you. And I know we keep talking about sad stuff, but man, dude, that hit me hard. I think the part where you said something about you not being able to spend time with your family, spend time with your friends, how it was kind of sucking the life out of you.
Yeah.
Dude, that got me. That really did. I truly felt for you.
It was a hard, like I said, it was a really hard past 4 years, It's sort of like the old shop. I was really at this sweet spot of like, I had been tattooing already 20 years, like at that point. And I was at this real sweet spot of like, I still worked, and I worked a little harder because I was the main provider of the family, my family at the time. And so I worked more than, I probably worked 50 to 55 hours a week, maybe a little more. But I was at a sweet spot with like the shop ran itself. It wasn't that much work. Like everything just was running. There was like the occasional, there was the occasional problem. There was occasional fires to put out, but I could like go on vacation with my family. I had family time and stuff like that. And starting the shop all over again, and this time bigger, and it took way more management. Every aspect of it took more management, and I never got into tattooing to be a manager.
Right.
Like I'm a fucking artist, and I never even knew how to run a business. Like I always ran my business haphazardly at the old shop, and it just worked. Like I've had to learn how to be a businessman, and I fucking hate it. Like it's totally the opposite of like being an artist for me, anyway. So yeah, it just took its toll. I mean, I was back to working way more than I wanted to, and I was back to managing way more than I wanted to. And then the pandemic came, and then the protests came, and like the rails just fucking came off, they just fucking came off. Like the business was already sort of declining over the last 2 years, just through a couple of things, and I think I was also getting worn out from all aspects. And then the pandemic and the protests came, and that was it. I mean, I was the only business on my block, but really probably within 4 blocks that wasn't boarded up. Everything boarded up downtown. I was out of work for 4 months this year, which like I had some enlightening moments through that too. Like
I read something that said that's the longest break that you've taken in 25 years or something.
Oh, 2 weeks into it, 2 weeks into the pandemic was the longest break I had ever had in tattooing. I had never had that much time off consecutively in tattooing, and that was 2 weeks into the pandemic. And I'm not a type of guy who is like, oh my god, I'm so bored, I wish I had something to do. I mean, I have my kids half the time anyway, so like that half of the week, and I have a toddler who's 3, who's got what probably could only be described as the same thing I was described with a kid, which is incredibly active and energetic. And so half the week, like I'm just in full dad mode, chasing after her all the time. Like she is on fire all the time, which is super fun. So we're always on adventures and riding our bike and riding our skateboard around and going to the park and the playground and Forest Park. So half the week is totally taken up by that. And then I have projects in my head that I've been wanting to do for myself, because I do, in essence, I do tattoo what I like these days. I'm lucky in that department, but it's always within the parameters of this is for this customer. Like it's been a long time since I've had the time to make art for myself,
Yeah.
And I like to garden, and I like to like work on my house and stuff like that. And I finally had time for all of that. And then I also finally had time to sit on my porch, and I wouldn't call it meditating, but like just
chilling,
just watch the world go by for an hour or two a day, And I had never had that in my adult life, I've always been hustling right out the gate. So, financially, obviously, was a fucking horrid year, missing out on 4 months of work. But I guess from a spiritual side, there was things that were really good about the pandemic, and it helped open my eyes to a lot of things. And things that are like important these days, which is like my family, my girls, my partner these days. I do have really good things in my life, so it helped really open my eyes to that. And at the same time, it was hard as fuck, and the shop ended up having to close on downtown. It just it couldn't financially take it anymore. My debt has been pushed to the limits throughout this, and there was no way I could get into a situation where I could head into winter, keep accumulating debt at this ratio, So I finally had to just stop and put a tourniquet on it, and that's what I did. I closed down the shop and I opened this kind of back to where I started, this really tiny private studio, and it's just me and my employee Jess and Maddie, and there's no signage again, and you just have to know it's there, and we're just quietly making really good tattoos, and about a block and a half from here.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. So, what's the deal now? Can anybody come get tattooed?
Well, the way the restrictions work with COVID now, there is no walk-ins, but there is same-day appointments. And I don't personally handle them, but Maddie or Jess will be able to do same-day appointments when they have time as well. So people email us, and that's really the only way you can do it these days, which was the other reason why the shop had to close. In essence, the governor turned every shop into a private studio. You have to have the doors locked at all times.
Right.
Same as sort of like a hairdresser, I think, And there's just the idea of having a 2,000 square foot private studio is absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
You can't make money at that. So we still take walk-ins when we can. Not me personally, but
right.
I'm typically booked out a bit. But
Dude, you're booked out a lot of it. You're being humble right now.
I'm being humble.
You're one of the best tattoo artists in the area. So, if someone does, just out of curiosity, if someone does want to get something done by you, what's the best route? The email?
Yeah, these days I don't have a shop manager anymore. I don't check the phone too often. So email is the best way to get a hold of me. And also going back to telling people, so it's good to advertise this. I'm telling people I don't get back to people that quick in the email. I know everyone's used to text or emails where you're getting back to them the second that it gets written, but that's not the way I do things. I'm getting back to as Andy would say, perfecting my craft and honing my craft again. And I don't need to hone my craft as far as social media goes or emailing or computering and stuff like that. My craft is tattooing and art, and that's what I'm really focusing on. So people who want really good art and tattoos, I'm always taking new appointments. It just takes 5 or 6 months to usually get in. But if you want to start the process, you just
Dude, it's well worth it.
It's well worth it.
J-May is going to pop up my tattoo right now. Because dude, it makes all my other tattoos look terrible now.
Well,
but at least I have one huge, awesome tattoo.
It's true.
All right, a couple positive things before I've been keeping it Debbie Downer. I want to before we get out of here, a couple positive things. You got asked to create artwork for a very famous bourbon company, Bulleit Bourbon. You were one of 4 people.
I think 5.
5 who were chosen to create artwork for a bourbon bottle.
Yeah. How
did that happen? That is one of the coolest things that I have seen.
Yeah, that one really fell in my lap at a good time too. I was sort of scrambling to keep the debt at bay, and I was working like crazy to just sort of pay taxes. That's sort of the other thing that sucks. You open up a brand new shop and you're paying all these taxes on all these new things. So I was just really trying to keep my debt at bay. So I was working a ton, and the guy they did it for a few cities, LA, Austin, New York, here. I can't remember. But anyway, the guy who did the LA one, who has worked with this company before, is Sean Barber, and he's a really great friend of mine, and I've been tattooing him for years. And so they said, we need someone up in Portland. And he was like, oh, you got to go see Jason, you know? So yeah, I basically just talked with the guys and got the job. And it was interesting for me because it was really graphic art, you know, like I don't do graphic art. I don't do computer art really. So I would do it, and I was working with like a graphic design team, and I would send in a scan of what I do. And they're like, oh, can we change this a little? And I'm like, well, I can. Like, it means redrawing the whole thing. It doesn't mean like moving things on the computer. Like, I don't know how to do that. Like, that's not what I do. So that happened a lot, and to the point where I was like, holy shit, this is fucking exhausting. Like,
so about how long would you say the drawing for the bottle took? You can guesstimate.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe it's hard to say. Like, in the end, like 20 or 30 hours, which probably for the people who knew how to do it on the computer, I bet it was like 10 hours, if that, you know. So, but in the end, it was good. It was a good job. It was fun because a lot of people who don't necessarily have tattoos from me, like, saw the exposure, you know, like different senseis at the gym that I see at the dojo would be like, I saw your bottle, it's so cool. And I'm like, oh, it's funny, like, because it's really not what I do. But it brought like, I guess, my artwork in general to a wider crowd than I would usually see my artwork, you know?
Yeah. Well, dude, I just want to say thank you so much. It was so cool having you on, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you, buddy.
Y'all, check us out at Dojo Outfitters, at Chicken Bone BJJ, at Jason Kundell. Is it ARW? I think that's if you look up Jason Kundell on Instagram.
Jason Kundell, AWR.
AWR. You'll find it. Yo, thanks for checking us out. Peace.